Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The value of a human life in Wyoming, 1876, could be counted in coins. $3. That was the price. She was 19 years old, untouched, placed on a crude auction platform in a mud-soaked settlement that barely deserved a name. Sold not for love, not for labor, but for ownership. Rhett Calderon paid the money not because he wanted a wife, but because the silence of the prairie had grown too loud to bear. What he purchased that day was not a woman alone. It was a buried truth. A truth that would soon ride straight into his land painted for war. He believed he understood the Apache. Years alone hardened men into thinking they knew danger when they saw it, but he was unprepared for this warrior, and unprepared for the sound Ilyra Voss would make the moment their past collided. Three Forks Crossing was no town. It was a wound. A sprawl of canvas tents, warped shacks, and mud-packed cabins clawing at the edge of a slow, foul river. The place survived on greed, draining coin from nearby soldiers, westbound speculators, and trappers desperate for warmth, liquor, or forgetfulness. Rhett Calderon rode into that wound on a wind-sliced Tuesday, his hat nearly torn from his head. He looked carved from the same stone as the distant ridges, hard, weathered, and worn by regret. The lines in his face told stories of sunburn, storms, and years best left unspoken. He had come for necessities only: salt, coffee, ammunition. Nothing else. He had not spoken to another soul in 2 months, and he saw no reason to change that. He tied his mule, Bess, outside a sagging building that called itself Olin Creel's Mercantile and Saloon. The noise hit him immediately: harsh laughter, ugly cheers. This was not the sound of cards or dice. This was something worse. He shoved through the swinging doors. The air inside was thick with sour beer, sweat, and cheap perfume clinging to desperation. At the far end, men pressed shoulder to shoulder around a makeshift platform. On that platform stood Olin Creel, wide-bodied and well-fed, smiling with his mouth, but not his eyes. His Eastern suit was too fine for this place, and that alone marked him as dangerous. "Gentlemen," Creel thundered, greed dripping from every syllable, "I offer you a rare prize in this God-forsaken stretch of land. Fresh from Missouri, by unfortunate turns of fate. 19 years old, strong, untouched." He motioned forward. A young woman was shoved into view. Rhett Calderon stopped cold. She was not like the others who drifted through Three Forks. No paint, no false smiles. She shook visibly, yet her chin stayed lifted, defiance stretched thin as glass. Her hair, pale as harvested wheat, was pulled back in a careless knot. Her dress hung in tatters, but its cut spoke of a life that once knew dignity, a remnant of the East. And her eyes, clear as winter sky, were filled with terror so sharp it burned. "This," Creel announced, "is Ilyra Voss." Her late father, Siren Voss, left behind a debt, a serious one, to me. She has agreed to settle it. A man laughed. "Looks like she's ready to run." "She's spirited," Creel sneered. "Some might enjoy the challenge." "What am I offered for 5 years of service?" he continued. "Cooking, cleaning, comfort." Silence followed. This was not a night's purchase. This was ownership. "I'll give $1, slurred a drunken buffalo hunter, flashing a rotten grin. $1, Creel mocked. "For this? Shame on you, Tolliver Rusk." "She's thin," another voice shouted. "She'd snap in the wind." $2, Rusk barked, fumbling for coin. That's all she's worth, someone added. Ilyra Voss flinched, her fists clenched white. She scanned the crowd in desperation until her gaze caught on a man near the door. Rough, bearded, silent. Rhett Calderon did not leer. His eyes were empty. He felt her stare hit him like a weight, a tether. It made his stomach turn. He despised this place. He despised Olin Creel. He despised the hunger in the room. He had seen men sold during the war. This was no different. $2, going once, Creel sighed. Twice. $3, a voice cut in, low, unused, cracking the air. The saloon froze. All eyes turned to Rhett Calderon, the hermit, the mountain man. Creel's smile widened. He knew the ranch was real. He knew the money was good. $3 from Mr. Calderon, Creel announced. A man of refined taste. The coins hit the counter with finality. Sold. Do I hear $4? $3.50? Olin Creel called out, scanning the room. Tolliver Rusk cursed under his breath and dropped back into his seat. No other bids came. The men were more wary of Rhett Calderon's reputation than tempted by the girl on the platform. Going once? Going twice? Sold. Creel slammed his palm against the bar. To Mr. Rhett Calderon, for the noble sum of $3. Rhett stepped forward. The crowd split without protest. He did not acknowledge them. He did not acknowledge Creel either. 3 heavy silver coins struck the wood. The sound ended the matter. The papers, Rhett said flatly. Of course, Mr. Calderon. A pleasure. Creel slid a document across the counter. Indenture of Ilyra Voss, daughter of Cyran Voss, deceased. Term, 5 years. Services rendered. Rhett signed without hesitation and looked up. Ilyra stared at the floor, shaking so violently he could see it in her shoulders. Come, he said. It was the only word he offered. He turned and left. He did not look back. He did not need to. Her footsteps followed, light, unsteady, hurried. To the crowd, he was her owner. To her, he was the only man who had not looked at her like meat. He was the least frightening monster in the room. The ride to his homestead lasted 2 hours, and not a single word. He seated her on the mule and walked beside her. The wind pressed the grass flat, whispering through the plains like secrets never meant to be kept. She did not speak. She did not cry. She clung to the mule's mane, her body stiff as wood. Rhett's thoughts churned. What had he done? He lived alone in a 1-room cabin. He had no use for a woman, no space for one. Pity? Revulsion? Or the crushing emptiness of the high plains, so wide it finally demanded another heartbeat, even a frightened one. He had traded $3 for a human soul. And with every step into dusk, he felt the debt shifting onto his own back. His homestead sat low in a shallow basin, sheltered by old cottonwoods. It was nothing grand, a solid cabin, a lean barn, a fenced corral. But it was clean, orderly. Unlike 3 Forks, it breathed. He helped her down. Her boots touched earth and she swayed, drained. He motioned toward the cabin. She went inside. Her gaze darted across the narrow room. The stone hearth, rough table, dim light. Rhett dropped his saddlebags by the fire. The space closed in. He caught the scent of her fear. Metallic beneath dust and faint rose soap, the last trace of another life. He fed the fire, struck a match, kept his back turned. "There's a lean-to out back," he said, voice worn thin. "Built for storage, but it's dry. There's a cot. It's yours." Ilyra's head snapped up. She had been braced for something else, something cruel. Rhett faced her then. His eyes were the color of a winter sky before snow. "You were sold," he said. "I paid the debt. The paper says you owe 5 years' work. You'll cook, clean, mend. You'll work. That's the deal." He paused, gaze sharpening. "But I am not Olin Creel. I am not the men in that saloon. I don't take what isn't given." He reached into a crate and pulled free a small iron latch and bolt. He tossed it to her. It weighed heavy in her hands. "The door bolts from your side," he said. "You'll be safe." Ilyra stared at the metal. A lock. Privacy. Protection. It was the first true mercy she had been shown in months. She could not speak. She only nodded, throat tight. "There's stew on the stove. Eat. Then go to your room," Rhett said, turning away. "We're up before dawn. Fences need checking." The first week became a quiet battle. Ilyra worked as if chased. She scrubbed until the floors gleamed. She cooked plain, filling meals and vanished before Rhett sat down. She stitched his shirts with careful, invisible seams, trying to prove her worth, to keep the unspoken clause buried. Rhett watched her, and he understood this much. She was not trying to survive the work. She was trying to survive the fear. Red Calderon was a man who survived by noticing details. That skill had kept him breathing during his years scouting for the Union. He watched. He remembered. He saw that Ilyra Voss never wasted food, not even crumbs. He saw the quiet precision in her movements, too refined for hard labor, shaped by schooling rather than survival alone. Her hands were cracked and raw, yet they lacked the thick scars of a field worker. And he saw her fear. She was afraid of the horizon, not the western line of mountains, but the east, toward the muddy wound of Three Forks Crossing. He caught her one afternoon by the creek, bent over the water, scrubbing his clothes against stone. She was humming, a low, broken tune, half lost to memory. Something old, something sad. One hand was clenched tight around an object. When she noticed him, she startled. The thing vanished into her pocket before he could make it out. "The clothes are nearly done, Mr. Calderon," she said quickly, face drained of color. "Red," he corrected, rough and brief. "My name's Red." He didn't ask what she was hiding. It wasn't his concern. The boundary was clear. He had the cabin. She had the lean-to. Between them stood a bolted door, and a silence that thickened with each passing day. But the silence was changing. It was no longer the hush of strangers. It was the strained quiet of two people pretending not to see each other. Then the blizzard came. The wind screamed down from the north, battering the cabin like a living thing. Rhett sat by the fire with a book in his hands. Plutarch's Lives, when a sound cut through the storm, a small, broken whimper. He knew the lean-to wasn't meant for warmth. He had built it for sacks of grain, not a person. He rose, lifted the heavy bearskin rug from the floor, and crossed to her door. Silence answered him, sharp, terrified. "Ilyra," he called. It was the first time he had spoken her name. "It's cold. I'm leaving a blanket." A faint scuffle followed. The bolt slid free. The door cracked open just enough for a pale hand to reach out, seize the fur, and drag it inside. The bolt slammed shut again. Rhett returned to the fire, unsettled. Something shifted in his chest, something he had believed frozen solid. He had brought her here to quiet his loneliness, yet he remained alone. But now, for the first time in years, he could feel the shape of it. It had a name, and it slept just beyond a thin wooden wall, behind a bolt he himself had given her. Days later, the storm broke. The world emerged white and hushed, scrubbed clean. Ilyra stepped out of the lean-to, her face tight with cold, but steady with resolve. She carried the folded bearskin in her arms. "Thank you, Mr. Rhett," she said softly. "It's a hard land," he replied, taking the rug. She hesitated, then held out her hand. Resting in her palm was a small object, a bird carved from pale wood, wings spread. Simple, rough, shaped with care. "What's this?" he asked. "It was mine, from before," she murmured. "I have nothing else to offer. For the blanket." Rhett studied the carving, then her face. It was the first thing she had ever given freely. And he understood. It was the only thing she truly owned. He shook his head slowly. "I don't take what isn't offered," he said. "And I don't take what can't be spared. Keep it." She stared at him, blue eyes wide, confusion and fragile hope turning together like weather. She closed her fingers around the bird. "I'll start the coffee," she said quickly, retreating into her work. Rhett watched her go. The distance between them had shortened. No longer a continent, just the width of a cabin. And it was shrinking. After the thaw, the land turned heavy and wet. The air warmed, but unease settled in its place. It started with the cattle. Rhett's small herd bunched tight near the cabin, horns clacking, eyes locked on the eastern ridge. "They smell something," Rhett said from the porch, steam curling from his coffee. Ilyra paused mid-sweep, her knuckles white around the broom. "What?" she asked. "Wolf? Catamount?" He didn't finish the thought. "Or Apache," she whispered. Rhett nodded slowly, scanning the ridge. "Apache hunt here," he said. "But this feels wrong. They're not hunting." They were watching. That night, the silence pressed down like a held breath. Too complete, too wrong. No coyotes cried. No owls answered the dark. "Stay inside," Red Calderon told her. "Bar the door from your side. The bolt." He took up his Spencer rifle and climbed a low spine of rock overlooking the valley. There he stayed until dawn, a still shadow beneath the moon, eyes fixed on the land. Nothing moved. Nothing showed itself. He returned at first light, exhausted, and found Ilyra Voss seated at the table with a shotgun resting across her knees. She had not slept. "You know how to handle that?" he asked, surprised. "My father taught me," she said. Bitterness edged her voice. "He said the West wasn't civilized. He was right." "He was," Red agreed, pouring coffee. The sense of being watched did not fade. Over the next 2 days it grew heavier, an unseen weight pressing against the air itself. On the third day, Rhett found the sign. He was walking the north fence when he saw it, tied to the top post with a strip of sinew. An eagle feather. One flawless plume, unmoved by the wind. Not a threat, a statement. He rode hard back to the cabin. Ilyra rushed out, her face drained of color. "We're leaving?" she asked, hope and fear tangled tight. "To town? To the fort?" "No," Rhett said, swinging down from Bess. "That's what they want. We wouldn't make 5 miles before they cut us down. We stay." "We fight?" she asked. Who are they? How many? It isn't a war party, Rhett said, more to himself than to her.
He pulled the feather from his coat.
A war party doesn't leave a calling mark. This is personal. He studied her closely, gray eyes sharp. You've been watching the east since the day you arrived, back toward Three Forks. You're scared of Olin Creel, sure, but you're afraid of something else. What happened before you reached that place? What did you and Ilyra Voss do? We traveled, she said quickly. From Missouri. Don't lie to me, Rhett said low. Not now. This isn't random. He held up the feather. This is meant for someone, and I think it's meant for you. She recoiled as if struck. For me? No, that's impossible. I don't know any Apache. I've never... Her voice broke. She stared at the feather, her face gone pale. What is it? Rhett pressed. Urgent. Quiet. Nothing, she said, turning away. It's just a feather. You're trying to scare me. I don't need to, Rhett growled. You've been afraid of this since you walked through my door. He lifted his rifle. Take the shotgun. Stay by the window. Don't fire unless they're breaking in. I don't know what they want, he continued, but I won't let them take what's mine. The word hung between them. Mine. He meant the homestead. He meant his life. But she flinched all the same. Rhett took position by the front door, rifle resting against the sill. Ilyra moved to the opposite window. They waited as the sun climbed high, heat pressing down, the air thick with dread. Rhett watched the ridge. Heat shimmered. A hawk circled lazily. Then, movement. Not many. One. A lone rider descended from the ridge, slow and deliberate. Not a charge, either a parlay or a death sentence. The rider was striking. He rode a spotted war pony without saddle or bridle, buckskin leggings, a bone breastplate, long black hair braided with otter fur. His face was painted, black for war, red for life. In his hand, a single lance adorned with feathers. He was Apache. He was power. Everything the frontier had taught men to fear. He reined in 100 yards from the cabin. Stay inside, Rhett ordered, voice rough. Lock the door. No, Ilyra Voss said. Her voice shook, but it did not yield. I'll stand with you. I won't hide. Rhett looked at her, startled. Fear still lived in her eyes, but something else held it back. Thin, sharp resolve. He nodded once and stepped onto the porch, rifle low but ready. This is my land, Rhett called into the stillness. State your business, or turn back. The valley held its breath. The warrior remained mounted perfectly still, his stare fixed on Rhett Calderon, cold, ancient, weighing more than a weapon. It was not the look of a man measuring land. It was the look of someone searching past him, toward the cabin behind. Drawn by a force she could not explain, Ilyra Voss stepped into the doorway. The shotgun felt heavy, awkward in her hands. The warrior's head snapped toward her, his body locked rigid. The air in the valley thinned, as if the land itself recoiled. Rhett saw it instantly, the way the man's grip tightened on the lance, knuckles bleaching white. The cold slits of his eyes widened. A small, broken sound escaped Ilyra's throat. The warrior did not look at her as prey. He stared like a man confronting a ghost. Rhett lifted his rifle, tension coiling tight. Last warning, he called. Turn around. Ride out. The warrior ignored him. Without breaking his gaze from Ilyra, he did something impossible. Slowly, deliberately, He swung down from his pony. He let the lance fall. It struck the earth with a heavy, final thud. Then he raised both hands, empty. "What in hell?" Rhett muttered. The warrior took 2 measured steps forward. He was tall, built of lean, controlled strength. He stopped, eyes never leaving the woman in the doorway. And then he knelt. One knee dropped into the dirt of Rhett Calderon's yard. An Apache warrior in full regalia bowing his body. Not surrender, not fear. Something far more shattering. The shotgun slipped from Ilyra's fingers and crashed against the porch boards. Her hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes were wide, not only with terror, but with recognition so violent it hurt to see. She was staring at his neck. Hanging from a simple leather cord tucked beneath his breastplate was a small carved object. A bird. Rhett looked from the kneeling warrior to the woman frozen on his porch, his thoughts unraveling. Ilyra Voss opened her mouth. What came out was not a plea, not a warning. It was a scream, raw, piercing, ripping through the valley and echoing off the distant mountains. A sound that carried terror, grief, and a name. "Navai?" The name followed the scream, torn from her throat like a wound. The kneeling Apache warrior looked up. Beneath the stark war paint, disbelief cracked his face. When he spoke, his voice was deep, steady, and his English was flawless, touched only by a faint, buried accent. "Ilyra." Rhett Calderon's world tilted. He swung his rifle between them, mind racing. "Talk sense," he demanded. "Who is this? Who is he?" Ilyra stumbled down the porch steps, her legs barely holding her. "I thought you were dead," she whispered, tears carving clean lines through the dust on her cheeks. "My father. He said they hanged you." "They tried," the warrior said. His voice carried something Rhett had not expected. Pain, sharpened by control. He rose to his feet. He was still Navai, but he was also something forged by fire and survival. "You know him?" Rhett demanded, rifle still raised. "Yes," Ilyra said, shaking. "He worked for us, at my father's estate." The past spilled out, years of memory breaking loose at once. His name had been Navai O'Malley, the son of an Irish groundskeeper and an Apache woman taken to a mission school. He grew up between worlds, never wide enough for the house, never native enough for either side's mercy. While Ilyra Voss buried himself in ledgers and land deals, Ilyra slipped away to the stables. Navai, 4 years older, taught her to ride, to listen to horses, to see beauty where others saw labor. "He carved birds," she whispered, her hand diving into her pocket, closing around the small wooden figure she never let go. Navai reached to his own chest and pulled the cord free. The matching bird swung in the light. "You kept it," he said softly, wonder breaking through his control. "I always did," she cried. "What in God's name is happening?" Rhett roared, feeling like a stranger standing inside his own life. The story darkened. When Ilyra was 16, her father found them, not touching, not hidden, just sitting on a fence line, watching the sun go down. But Navai was a man by then, and Ilyra was no longer a child. Ilyra Voss, obsessed with blood and appearances, saw only corruption. "He called him a half-breed dog," Ilyra sobbed. "He accused him of things, terrible things. He said he stole from us." Her voice broke. "He had him arrested." Navai continued, his voice dropping lower. The faint lilt vanished, replaced by something flat and lethal. "The sheriff was already paid," he said. There was no trial. Your father, Ilyra Voss, had me dragged to the edge of the property, tied to a post. Ilyra Voss sobbed, shaking her head. No. No. He had me whipped, Navai said. His words were iron. Said he wanted to teach the animal obedience. He turned away from them and lifted the buckskin shirt from his back. Rhett Calderon's blood went cold. Ilyra gasped, both hands flying to her mouth. Burned deep into Navai's skin was a scar so deliberate it made the stomach twist, a crude, puckered brand in the shape of a single letter. H. For Voss, Navai said calmly. He branded me like cattle. Then he had his men hang me from a tree. They rode off laughing. But you, Ilyra whispered, voice breaking. The rope was old, Navai said. Or maybe some god I didn't yet know was watching. The branch snapped. I fell. I ran. He exhaled slowly. I didn't stop until I reached my mother's people, the Apache. I learned their ways. I learned who I truly was. Silence pressed down hard. Rhett finally lowered his rifle. The pieces were fitting together now, and the picture was brutal. The debt, Rhett said, turning to Ilyra. Your father. My father, she echoed, her voice small. After Navai disappeared, everything collapsed. She swallowed. Our partner, Olin Creel, started calling in loans. My father was proud, but he wasn't careful. He was cheated. Creel took the estate, took everything. Her hands clenched. We came west to outrun the shame. My father started drinking. He couldn't find work. He kept borrowing from the only man who would still lend to him. Olin Creel, Rhett finished. A cold knot tightened in his gut. This wasn't chance. It was a web, and all of them were trapped. He followed us? Ilyra asked, looking at Navai. Creel? Navai shook his head, fire flaring in his eyes. No, he was already here. He's been here for years. He ruins men in the east. He ruins them in the west. He runs this territory. He runs guns. He runs whiskey. And he runs people. Navai turned his gaze to Ilyra. I've been watching Creel for a moon. My people want him gone. He sells rifles to our enemies to stir war with the soldiers. I was waiting. Then his eyes hardened. And I heard a rumor. A white woman from Missouri, eyes the color of the sky. Ilyra Voss's daughter. He looked at Rhett. I tracked you. I watched you buy her. I watched you take her. I came to take her back, Navai said quietly. To kill you if I had to. Rhett's hand tightened on his rifle. And now? And now, Navai said, I see the lock on her door. I see she holds a shotgun beside you, not against you. And I see the carved bird in her hand. He looked at Ilyra then. The fury in his eyes softened, replaced by a deep, aching grief. He destroyed us both, Navai said. Your father, and the man who pulled his strings, Olin Creel. Rhett looked at the branded warrior and the girl sold for $3. He had wanted a quiet life. That was no longer possible. He's not just a saloon keeper, Rhett said grimly. He's got friends, soldiers, bared ashen from the fort. He's on Creel's payroll. They're trying to force me off this land, claimed the spring belongs to the army. Ashen, Navai spat. He buys the rifles from Creel, skims army supplies, sells them back to Creel,
who moves them to our enemies. Ashen gets gold, the enemies get guns, and the Apache get bullets. It's good business.
Ilyra, who had been listening in stunned silence, lifted her head. The fear was gone. What replaced it was something far more dangerous. The tears were gone. What remained was a clean, focused fury, sharp enough to match Navai's. "He sold me," Ilyra Voss said, her voice low and lethal. "The man who destroyed my family sold me for $3 to settle a debt he invented." She turned to Rhett Calderon. "You bought me." Then she faced Navai. "But he still owns me." "As long as Olin Creel lives, I am the paper you signed." Her gaze hardened.
"You want him for what he's done to your people? For the brand? For the blood?" She stepped between them. The small 19-year-old who had been property all her life became the still center of the storm. "I want him for my father's life," she said. "I want him for my name. I want him for what he turned me into." Rhett looked at Navai. Navai looked back. An understanding passed. This was no longer about a woman.
"Seems," Rhett muttered, ejecting a shell and sliding a fresh one into his rifle. "We all have a debt to collect from Olin Creel." The sun burned down on the cabin, but a colder resolve settled inside. They sat at the rough table. Rhett spilled flour and traced a crude map with his finger. 3 Forks here. Creel's place here. The fort's 10 miles east. "Baird Ashen won't be in town," Rhett said. "Too careful. He keeps his hands clean."
He'll be at the fort,
Navai agreed, motionless as stone, eyes alive and measuring.
"Counting gold." "Creel is the head," Navai added. "Ashen is the venom. We need both." "We can't reach Ashen," Rhett argued. "He's behind a stockade and 100 soldiers." "Creel is just a man," Ilyra said quietly. "A man with hired guns." Both men turned to her. She wasn't wringing her hands. She wasn't crying. Her blue eyes were ice. "My father was an accountant," she continued. "Meticulous. That's why Creel targeted him. Predictable men leave records." "Creel is the same," she said. "Arrogant. He believes he's untouchable. He will have a ledger. Somewhere in his office," she went on, "a book listing every rifle sold to Ashen, every false debt, every stolen acre." "A book," Rhett said. "That changes everything." "Proof," Navai said. "With that, Ashen's own masters will hang him." "And Creel?" Navai asked, his hand resting near his knife. "The book is my price," Ilyra said.
"For what I'm about to do." Rhett frowned. "You can't get near him."
"I can," she replied, steady and precise. "You, Rhett. He'd shoot on sight. He wants your land. And you," she looked at Navai, "are Apache. The town would open fire before you crossed the street." She stood. "But me. I'm his property. I'm the $3 bride. A frightened runaway who tasted the wild and wants to come home." They stared at her. "You're going back," Rhett said, rising. "Absolutely not. He'll kill you, or worse." "He won't kill me," Ilyra said. "I'm worth money. He'll punish me. He'll try to break me." "Navai," she said, voice trembling with held rage. "I know exactly what he's capable of. He turned a good man into a drunk. He drove a family from its home. He sold a human being." "I'm going back," she said. "I'll play the broken girl. I'll tell him you," she pointed to Rhett, "are a monster. that you beat me. I'll beg for his protection. He's arrogant, she added.
He'll love it. He'll put me to work. And I'll find the ledger.
It's too dangerous, Red insisted. It's the only way, she said. While I'm inside, Ilyra continued, you two deal with Baird Ashen. You said he's at the fort. We need him out. We need Ashen and Creel in the same place. Navai nodded, seeing it. The rifles. The shipments. Exactly, Ilyra said. She pointed to Navai. You send a message, not to Ashen, to Creel. You offer to buy rifles, she finished.
A large shipment. You'll say the Apache are animals, Ilyra Voss said evenly. That you want them crushed. You'll offer gold. We don't have gold, Rhett Calderon growled. But Olin Creel believes you do, she replied, a faint, dangerous smile touching her mouth. He believes your land is rich. You'll be Navai's partner, his translator. You'll tell Creel you were driven off your land by Indians and chose to profit with them instead. He'll believe it. Greed dulls a man's mind. He'll set a meeting, Navai continued, picking up the thread. Away from town, away from the fort. He'll bring Baird Ashen to guard the shipment. And that's when you get the ledger? Red asked. No, Ilyra said quietly. That's when I bring it to you. I'll tell Creel I overheard your plans. He'll bring me along. He'll want to show me off, to show both of you what he owns. Rhett studied her, something like awe settling in his eyes. This was no frightened girl. This was a commander. It's a gamble, Rhett said. If anything breaks, we die,
Navai finished. I have already died once. I do not fear it. I do, Ilyra admitted, her voice soft for only a heartbeat. But I'm more afraid of living my life as a $3 document. I'll do it. The plan locked into place. Reckless, precise, perfect. Navai rose first. He would ride to his people, gather enough Apache warriors to make the threat real, and send word to Creel within 2 days.
At the door, he paused and looked back at Ilyra. The boy you knew, Navai. He's mostly gone.
I know, she said, clutching the small wooden bird. But the man who stands here now, he's the one I need. Navai nodded once, sharp and respectful, then vanished into the prairie like a shadow. The cabin fell quiet. It was not an empty silence anymore. It hummed. You'll need a story, Rhett said gruffly. A convincing one. He looked at her. His jaw tightened. He drew his hand back. What are you doing? She asked, flinching. He stopped himself. He'll expect marks. No, she said, steel in her voice. Don't you dare. Rhett looked at his raised hand, then let it fall, shame washing over him. You're right. I'm sorry. My fear will be enough, Ilyra said, moving to the door. When this is finished, the paper, the indenture. When this is finished, Rhett said, meeting her gaze. You'll burn it yourself. She nodded.
She pulled her thin shawl tight and, for the second time, left the safety of his cabin. She began the long 2-hour walk back to Three Forks Crossing, back to the man who had bought and sold her. The walk was a pilgrimage through terror. She didn't have to pretend exhaustion or panic. It lived in her bones. By the time the muddy sprawl of the settlement came into view, she looked exactly like what she needed to be. Broken. She pushed through the saloon's bat-wing doors and collapsed onto the filthy floor. A sob tore from her, raw and desperate, cutting through the midday noise. Mr. Creel, please. Olin Creel stood at the bar, counting coin. He looked up, shock flashing into possession. In an instant he had her by the arm, not with mercy,
but the fury of a man reclaiming property. "Well now," he boomed, dragging her upright. "The little bird flew home."
Where's Calderon?
"He's a monster," she cried, letting her body go slack so he had to hold her. "He locked me in a shed. He's mad. He talks to himself. I ran the moment I could." "Please don't send me back," she begged. I'll work the saloon. I'll do anything." Creel's oily smile returned. He savored broken spirits. He looked her over, filthy, shaking, defeated. "Perfect." "Of course you will," he said, patting her head in a grotesque mockery of comfort.
First, you'll clean my office. It's a pigsty.
She scrubbed floors. She washed glasses. She endured roaming hands and drunken laughter. And in the dark hours before dawn, she cleaned his office, waiting for the book that would end him. The large roll-top desk was locked, exactly as Ilyra Voss knew it would be. She waited. On the third day, the message came. A single Apache boy arrived at the saloon with a peace offering of raw gold and a message written on hide.
Olin Creel was beside himself with delight.
He sent for Baird Ashen at once. Ilyra was on her knees, scrubbing the hearth in Creel's office, making herself smaller than dust as the two men met. "It's Navi," Creel said, showing Ashen the gold. "He wants rifles. A lot of them. And he's got Rhett Calderon translating," Creel added with a grin. "Looks like the hermit finally broke and joined the savages." Ashen, immaculate in his blue uniform, smiled thinly. "Perfect.
We'll set the exchange at the Canyon Pass. We sell the rifles," he continued calmly. "My men ride in. We kill the Apache. We kill Calderon. And we keep the gold. A clean operation."
Ilyra's blood turned to ice. This wasn't a deal. It was a slaughter. She needed the ledger, and she needed to warn them. That night she waited. She served whiskey until her legs shook. Near 2 in the morning, Creel, drunk and swollen with confidence, dismissed her.
She slipped into a dark linen closet upstairs, heart pounding. An hour later, Creel stumbled in, unlocked his office and went inside. She heard the scrape of the desk, a satisfied sigh, and then the deep rumble of sleep. This was it. She eased from the closet. The office door stood ajar. She pushed it open. Creel was slumped in his chair, head on the desk, an empty bottle by his hand. And the desk was open. The ledger lay in plain sight. Her hand shook as she reached for it. "Going somewhere?"
Ilyra froze. Creel's head lifted. His eyes were sharp, cold, amused. He hadn't been drunk. His hand snapped out, crushing her wrist. "Did you really think I was that stupid, girl?" He chuckled, twisting her arm. "You've got your father's nerve, but not his caution." "Who are you working with?" he hissed. "Calderon." "No, please," she gasped, pain shooting through her arm. "Or the half-breed," he whispered, his face inches from hers. "Oh, yes."
"I know all about Navi O'Malley. I've known he was out here for months."
"I knew he'd come for you," Creel said softly. "And you walked straight back to me." He dragged her upright and pulled a pistol from the drawer. "It seems my arrangement with Baird Ashen needs a new piece of bait." The cold barrel pressed to her temple. "You're going to write a new message," he said. "You'll tell your friends the meeting's tomorrow. You'll tell them to come alone."
"Or the next time they see you," he finished. "It'll be in pieces." The canyon was a black wound cut into the earth, the moon a thin bone overhead. Ilyra was tied to the front of Creel's supply wagon,
rope biting into her wrists, a filthy gag stuffed between her teeth. She was the bait. Above her, hidden among the rocks, Olin Creel, Baird Ashen, and a dozen Ashen Ridge troopers waited, quiet, confident, deadly. They had received Ilyra's forced message. They knew their prey was coming. A sound echoed down the canyon. One horse, one rider, Ashen whispered, glass to his eye. Alone. The Indian lost his nerve. Red Calderon rode into the mouth of the canyon, hands raised, silvered by moonlight. "Creel? Ashen?" he shouted. "I know you're there. I'm here for the girl." "Where's the half-breed?" Creel called back, triumph dripping from every word. "He's gone," Red yelled. "He saw the trap. It's just me." "I'll give you the deed to my land," he continued. "Just let her go." Ilyra's heart thundered. "Navai, no."
You wouldn't leave.
"The land and the gold," Creel laughed. "Ride in, Calderon. Drop the rifle." Rhett let his Spencer fall into the dust. He urged his mule forward. As he passed beneath the main ridge, Baird Ashen lifted his hand. "Now!" Soldiers rose from the rocks, rifles snapping into place. "It's over, Calderon," Ashen called. Rhett stopped. He looked up, not at Ashen, but at the far rim of the canyon. And he smiled. "Now," Rhett whispered. A single piercing shriek tore through the night. A red-tailed hawk screamed overhead. Ashen spun around. "What in the—" From the eastern rim, the side they had dismissed, shadows rose. A dozen of them. Navai and the Apache warriors, faces painted, bows drawn. They had used the night, scaling the sheer rock like spirits while every eye stayed fixed on Rhett Calderon. "It's a trap!" a soldier screamed. "Yes," Rhett snarled. "It is." Arrows fell in a dark hail. They did not seek flesh. They cut the tethers. Horses screamed and broke, stampeding through the canyon, shredding any chance of retreat. Rhett was already moving. He was never bait. He was the misdirection. He yanked the pistol from his boot, dropped the two nearest troopers and dove for the wagon, skidding to Ilyra Voss's feet. The canyon erupted. The Apache warriors came down swift and silent, steel and bone against rifles. With their escape severed and their lines shattered, the Ashen Ridge troopers panicked. "The wagon!" Olin Creel screamed as he realized his prize was slipping away. He leveled his pistol at Ilyra. Rhett rolled, covering her with his body as he slashed at the ropes. A bullet splintered the plank beside his head. "The knife, Red!" Ilyra gasped as the gag fell. "Cut me loose!" The rope snapped. "Run for the rocks!" Rhett shouted. "No," Ilyra said, raw and unbroken. She vaulted into the wagon bed and seized the shotgun Red had stashed earlier. "I'm not running." Above them, the fight ended fast and merciless. Baird Ashen, saber drawn, found himself cornered by Navai. "You savage!" Ashen spat, lunging. Navai moved like smoke. This was not a duel. It was judgment. He stripped Ashen of his blade, drove him into the stone, and held him there. "You disgrace the uniform," Navai said, voice cold. "You traffic with men like Creel." The knife went in once. Clean. Final. At the wagon, Olin Creel watched his world collapse, his men falling, Ashen, dead, his empire dissolved in dust. He turned and ran, scrambling for the rocks. He ran straight into Ilyra. She stood 10 feet away, the heavy shotgun steady at her chest. Creel froze, hands lifting slowly, that oily smile clawing for life. "Girl, Ilyra." "Smart," he said. "You're a survivor. I respect that. We can make a deal. The ledger, it's in my bag, worth a fortune. You and me." "My father," Ilyra said. Her voice shook. Her hands did not. "Ilyra Voss."
Do you remember his name?
"He was a fool," Creel spat. "A drunk who—" "He was my father," she cut in, stepping closer. "And you sold his daughter for $3. Creel's eyes flicked left, hunting an exit. There was none. He lunged, hand diving for his belt. The shotgun roared, the loudest sound the canyon would ever know. The blast hurled Creel backward. He hit the dirt with a wet, final weight. Silence followed. Thick. Absolute.
The Apache warriors were already fading into the dark. Red approached, gently taking the smoking shotgun from Ilyra's trembling hands.
Navai stepped forward. Sweat streaked the paint on his face. He looked at the dead man, then at her. "It is finished, Ilyra," he said softly. "My people will honor you. Come with me. Be my wife." Rhett stiffened. He cleared his throat. "Ilyra, the indenture, it's ash. The homestead is too big for one man. I'm offering a partnership. Equal shares.
Your own room.
Your own life." Ilyra looked at them both, the warrior who was her past, the scout who stood in her present, each offering a name, a future. She shook her head. "I am not his," she said, nodding toward Creel's body. "I am not property to be sold or traded." She faced Navai. "I am not a prize to be won. I will remember the boy you were, but I am not that girl anymore." Then she turned to Red. "And I am not a $3 debt to be balanced. I am not your partner, Red." She crossed to Olin Creel's wagon, yanked open the saddlebag, and drew out the ledger. She lifted it into the moonlight. "This is my freedom," she said. "This is my price." Navai met her eyes. There was sorrow there, deep and quiet, but also unwavering respect. "You belong to yourself," he said. "Tashina Luta," he whispered, touching the red shawl at her shoulders.
He slipped the carved bird from his neck and pressed it into her palm, folding her fingers over it and the one she already carried.
"Now you have both. Goodbye, Ilyra Voss." He swung onto his pony and rode away, never once looking back, dissolving into the dark. Rhett Calderon and Ilyra remained. "Well," Rhett said at last. "That's that." "Yes," she replied. "The homestead." "It's a long walk back," he said gruffly, nodding to his mule. Ilyra studied him. "I'm a good shot, Rhett, and a solid cook. But I'm not your partner." A small, long, unused muscle twitched in Rhett's weathered cheek, almost a smile. "No," he said. "You're not. You're the proprietor." He offered his hand. She took it. He helped her up onto the mule. They rode out of the canyon, leaving the dead to the law and turning toward home. Ilyra Voss had been sold for $3, but she bought her freedom with lead and steel. She wasn't saved by a cowboy.
She wasn't rescued by a warrior.
She saved herself. The Wild West wasn't only a land of outlaws and legends. It was a place of impossible choices and unthinkable courage. Ilyra Voss, Rhett Calderon, and Navai each found their justice, not in a courtroom, but in the dust of a Wyoming canyon. What do you think of Ilyra's final choice? Was she right to refuse them both? The stories of the women who built the West are too often overlooked.
If this journey into the raw, dramatic heart of the American frontier moved you, share it with someone who loves a true Western. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you.